So this is our kitchen. Not a whole lot has changed since the last video that I made, but I'll still go over everything as though it's new. These are custom 3D printed mounts for our Oral-B toothbrushes. They are fit really snug in there, that way they don't really move while we're in transit. We now have a mirror up here, and the mirror's been a life changer. I don't know, I think I went about 8 months without a mirror in here, using my phone for makeup and other things, and having a mirror mounted is a game changer. So that we do have this knife rack back here, more 3D printed mounts for other miscellaneous items, and then our storage with these hooks. This is a little piece of, I think it's like oak wood or something, with these hooks with the clasps, and they keep things up here. We try to take down some of the metal items whenever we move because they do scratch the back of the backsplash pretty good. Another 3D printed item that we have are these lid holders up top. These are, again, more TPU, so they're nice and flexible. They're mounted, they're like a crescent moon shape. They sit up here pretty nice, and the lids just slide in there, and they're easy enough to take in and out. When we first made those, we got these ball bungees with the intention of bungeeing them backwards like that. That way they didn't come out every time we moved, but they don't seem to come out in transit without the ball bungees. I think we forgot about them once between stops, and they seem to stay just fine, so we don't question it. We just leave them up there. We have now upgraded to a Berkey. Before the Berkey, we had a 5-gallon like Primo water jug that you can go exchange at grocery stores, and then a little electric water pump that you just press the button and it's battery powered, whatever. I like that a lot. It's just easy to have like a full 5-gallon jug of fresh water like available at your convenience and being able to exchange it at grocery stores. However, it's super bulky. It sat about this tall and took up about that much space, so we have not much space to work with. It kind of makes sense to go smaller. So a couple days ago, Taylor's mom actually gave us this Berkey, so we're going to try to use that and see how that works. And everybody else seems to like the Berkey, so we'll see if it works. On this side of the kitchen, not much has changed from our last video. We have our silverware holders that are mounted to the walls. They come off pretty easy like that. They've got these brackets that are mounted to the walls, and they just kind of slide on and off. The first couple times. We have our spice racks. All of this stuff, by the way, was bought on Amazon. I can link the products below, so check the description in the video. I'll link the products below so you can check them out. We opted for these plastic bottles over glass. I know glass is like super acidic and everything, but plastic doesn't break if you drop it on the ground or if it falls during transit. We haven't had any of these bottles of spices fall yet, but if it does happen, I would much rather clean up the spice and not spice and shards of glass. As far as the stove goes, we use this Dometic propane powered stove. A lot of people have issues with these things, and I don't know why. I live in this. I cook every day on the stove, and I've never had a problem with it. But yeah, a lot of people have an issue with these Dometic propane stoves in these Discovers, and I think it's the same one in the Explorer and the Pursue if you opt for those with the outdoor pull-out kitchen. Again, I've never had an issue with it, and I've used this almost every day for over a year, and it's worked great. No issues. And moving on over here, I think I'll start here. We have a Milwaukee battery charger. All of our tools are the Milwaukee tools, and use the M18 battery, so we keep one of these chargers up here. Normally we have a battery on this guy, but I think they're all in a tool right now. We even bought the Milwaukee chainsaw, so we have a chainsaw every time we go out and have to go off grid. Most of the time, especially with all the wind and the crazy weather that's been happening here in the Pacific Northwest, we've had to cut down a couple of limbs that were in the way, so the Milwaukee chainsaw has been great. So we have this charger here, and then right here is our Midland radio setup. So I've got the CD portion, and then I've got just the normal walkie-talkies and the charger mounted at the bottom. And this is our cabinet. And these are our oven racks. Our oven racks are, once again, mounted by 3D printed stuff. These are little modular dudes, the same one I had that were on the knife rack that held the cheese grater and the wine cork. These sit here, they're flexible, so you can just plug these in. Again, this is something that we made and designed with a purpose of not having to secure things while we're in travel. So these just stay up there while we move. We haven't had one fall yet. And we have a barn door latch on this. It is magnetic from factory, but we have cans and such up there. I don't want cans and stuff falling all over my things. So barn door latch it is. Keeps everything nice and secure. All of our food and our pans and stuff live in there. But again, I don't have to keep it latched because we're not going to move. So in the last video I said that we were coffee snobs. We're still coffee snobs, nothing's changed there, except now we're actually back in the Pacific Northwest, so now we're allowed to be coffee snobs and not looked at like we're crazy. So our espresso machine sits on this custom-made rack that Taylor built. It is welded together. We haven't painted it still, but you know, it hasn't rusted all the way through, so I think I'm going to leave it because I kind of like the rustic look, and by that I mean I'm just too lazy to pull it apart, pull everything off, and then paint it and put it back in. Anyways, it's mounted to the original tie-down rack that was in the wall that's mounted to the frame of the trailer. So it's nice and sturdy, nothing's going to move. We also have a Ninja food oven and air fryer combination, which has been fantastic. We can run all of this, by the way, on solar with our 3,000 watt inverter, which we'll go into here in a couple minutes because I'm going to let Taylor explain it because I'm really bad at explaining things like that. But next to that we have the 3D printer, which spits out all of these nice little mounts that we have in here. It hangs out on this table that we actually just got. A lot of these modifications are like brand new to us, so again, like, sorry for the mess. There's going to be some wires that are hanging out, but again, that's just part of the process and part of us building this trailer. Like I said, we've actually been off-grid for the first 2 weeks, like completely off-grid. Like we've camped without power and water or anything before for several weeks, but now that we don't have anything to come back to, we're now figuring out what works and what doesn't. And something that hasn't been working is a 3D printer used to live on the ground underneath the oven, and unfortunately it was just hitting the gantries and it just causing a mess. In fact, some of the parts are actually broken, but it still works just fine. But it's just not good for it to sit on the ground and like be pushed against and have coffee drip on it. So we bought this new table that had a couple shelves and we put it in. And that's pretty much that. Other than that, we've got nets that have a bunch of miscellaneous garbage that I need to clean up. Here's our WeBoost antenna. We do have a cell signal booster. It's mounted on the top of the trailer that of course you can't see because we're inside, but there's that. And then this is our Starlink router. We just got Starlink installed yesterday, so again, with the wires, we just haven't routed them very well yet because we're not entirely sure that's where we want the Starlink router to live, but that's where it is for now. Everyone's always so curious about how we use the bathroom, so let me tell you how we use the bathroom without going into explicit detail. If you guessed that we were still using the bathroom underneath the sink in the kitchen, you were 100% correct, because we still are, and it still works. So, our bathroom is under our kitchen sink. This is our toilet. It's a Thetford porta potty. We have mounted it on 500-pound drawer slides, and it slides out just like that. We use the toilet and we put it away. I do have Lysol wipes that are not too far away. I do wipe everything down pretty much daily because there's a toilet in our kitchen under my sink. So everything does get wiped down. The toilet gets emptied about once a week. That's typically the lifespan of the 5-gallon black tank. This is the one with the 4-gallon freshwater tank and the 5-gallon black tank. We had an issue a couple weeks ago. We had an issue where the toilet actually, I don't know if something got caught in the seal between the bowl and the tank, or if the spout that you pour the black tank out of, if stuff during travel like came up through the spout, but we had a mess. So this wasn't, this was just plain wood. So we took Flex Seal and we Flex Sealed the entire bottom of that. That way next time, if that happens again, because, you know, it's a toilet, I'm sure we'll have a mess in there at some point in time, it's going to be much easier to clean up Flex Seal rather than wood that's got nasty soaked into it. But
every trailer needs heat. And we've been using a Mr. Buddy for the last year, right? And the Mr. Buddy's great. It heats up really fast. It gets the trailer hot quick. But the biggest drawback of it is a wet heat, and unfortunately the trailer kept getting really wet inside, and eventually that caused mold when the weather turned so bad during the day that we were unable to open it up. So we added a diesel heater. This is an 8 kilowatt diesel heater, and we happen to have just enough room. And I literally just installed this, so I've still got to vacuum up some of the shavings in here, but we had just enough room to put it next to the toilet on the drawer slides. Now, there are several reasons that we put it in here. One, we have some water lines behind that this hose is going to keep just warm enough to not freeze, so none of the water lines in here can freeze. And the sink can't freeze up, which is important. Neither can the line for the water outlet on the sink. And then we have, again, our Chinese diesel heater. We've been super happy with this. It was a big pain to install here because it's actually meant to be screwed into like the floor of a van or a big rig. So I ended up mounting it up a little bit, running the exhaust out the floor, and then our air inlet is there on the bottom. I actually pushed a hole in the door and mounted the unit so that would line up properly. And then for the outlet, we have some 3-inch duct, and I had to cut a hole in our cabinet door there and mount that fixed to the side of the cabinet so that it would stay in place. So this thing's really awesome. We have our controller up top. We've got to fill the holes for the wiring going through. The connectors for this are ginormous, and unfortunately they didn't give the option of making them removable. They're actually glued on this one, so I couldn't just cut it and do that. It's kind of a mess. So I've got to fill in those little holes that I had to make for that connector. But this thing is on the lowest setting right now. You might hear it clicking. And when we crank it all the way up, this is on the 8 kilowatt setting. It's blowing a significant amount of air. I don't know if I can capture that, but you can see, you know, for it to pick up a towel like that and swing it around, it's putting out quite a bit of air, and it's very hot. We can only leave it on like that for a couple minutes, and then it's just unbearable.
For example, it's 64 degrees in here, and it's about 32 outside. It's like right at freezing.
Yeah, we've had it on the lowest setting like all day.
64 degrees on the lowest setting is not too bad in my book.
No. All right, so things have changed a little bit since you've last seen our solar setup. Not a whole bunch, but we did learn that we needed a couple little upgrades to make it more efficient. So we still have the 400 watts of panels on the trailer. We still have the 400 watts of panels on the truck. But we have swapped from the PWM charge controllers over to MPPT charge controllers. And we did have 30 amp controllers on there before. Now we've got 40 amps, so we have a little bit of room for expandability. We're doing a few tests right now to see if the 800 watts of solar that we have can keep up with our use, especially with adding Starlink into the setup, because I know that draws like 60 watts. So we'll see if this can keep up with it, but it's definitely improvement over the PWM style controllers. We do have a shutoff for each set of solar panels. So this is the controller for the trailer. This is the controller for the truck. And we have a disconnect on both of those. The reason why we added a disconnect is, for some reason, sometimes when you are out in the middle of nowhere, the batteries decide to do some weird things, and if one of them goes into storage mode for some reason, you can actually turn off both of the sets of solar panels, let it sit for a minute, and then either shock it by pulling a significant draw. So a lot of times we'll use the coffee maker, or we can actually shock it by adding a jolt of energy through a charge. So what we'll do is we'll turn these off, wait a second, wait for no power to be going to or from the batteries, and then we'll flick them on really quick, and that will actually reset the battery that's gone into storage mode. And that seems to work every time. So we've got those, and then we have our 3,000 watt power inverter from Renogy, which we've been really happy with. It powers just about anything we want. It's pretty awesome. And then right next to that, we just use a little power brick so that we can plug a few random things in. This is something we added just today, and it's kind of a neat little thing. We had a standard small 3-gang switch block from the factory here that housed the lights for the kitchen. There's a blue light for the cubby up top. There's a standard LED strip that goes across this kitchen, and then there's the fresh water pump for the sink. And we needed some more accessories, and so we had kind of added a couple more switches to it, trying to make room on it, and it was just ugly and a pain in the butt. So we added this larger 6-gang switch bank with circuit breakers built in. So this has breakers that we can push in case one pops, and it also allows us to wire in everything else that we needed to do. So now we have our fresh water pump for the sink, we have our water pump for the recirculating water system, in other words the shower and washer, and we have the water pump for actually it's just the sump pump for the shower, or 12 volt accessory. We have that wired as a more universal style plug on the outside of the truck box up front, and that allows us to jump start the dirt bikes if we ever need. We can jump start a vehicle off of it because it is on a 30 amp breaker. And then we have what we are calling our cockpit lights, which are cockpit lights right there, calling our alien lights. And then in the loft we have our stern lights, and those are actually on individual switches back there, so that we can also, if one person wants a light on their side, they can have it, or they can have it off. So that works out pretty well. Like I said, this is a recent upgrade as of today, so I'm going to be 3D printing a cover that these wires can come out of safely instead of rubbing on metal, and it'll cover up the ugly a little more.
So one of the recent additions that we had is we added a loft bed. Before we had an 18-inch bed frame that sat at the back of the trailer, and while that was good and all, we had plenty of storage underneath, we didn't have much utilization of the space above us. So we have a loft bed that we built out of what are these, 2x8s?
Yep, 2x8s.
2x8s, and they're tied into the frame of the trailer from these brackets that actually hold out the tip-out beds from the outside. So these go directly into the frame, and then we had to add a drop down because it was a little bit too tall in the beginning. Ignore my dog's bone. It's nasty. So we get up on the loft bed for bed at night. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's not too bad. I can't quite sit up all the way, but how often are you sitting up in bed? Just kidding. You're sitting up in bed a lot, but actually it's not that bad, believe it or not.
Yeah, especially since when we go below the loft is where things
because
get
below
really
the loft
cool.
is super cool.
the coolest part about the loft, we've got hammocks in here.
Got hammocks. Hammocks and a whole little cave to ourselves.
Not only that, but we actually have our microphones for recording things right here, and we can actually swing them right in front of our face as we sit in our hammock.
Whenever we have a podcast, that's going to be more.
Yeah, stay
more
tuned for
use.
that. We've actually been
One
working
day.
on our podcast, and we're really excited to release our first episode.
So anyways, come on in. Come on into our little den. Whoa.
All right, cue the next cool feature.
So as in our last video, you saw our nice little home theater. Well, we still have it.
Yep.
Except now it's in the cave.
Except now we can lay in a hammock and watch TV or play Mario Kart.
You know, some of those things that aren't really important for being off-grid, but are nice creature comforts that we just couldn't quite get away with yet.
Yep. Yep, that's right.
Home theater, and the dog gets front row seating, huh, Mia?
Yep.
All of our clothes are stored in the overhead cubbies next to the bed. We still have our ammo cans, but instead of being used for just stuff, some of them are used for stuff and some are used for clothes. In the back of the trailer, we still have our garage-style hooks that we use to store towels and other coats and other hanging things along the back wall.
Thanks again for watching. We really appreciate all the feedback on these videos. It definitely helps us keep going and strive to do better every time. We've been in the Discover for a year now. It's been a pretty awesome experience, and now it's getting to the point where it's definitely home, and nothing else quite feels like home. But the difference is, for us, we can go anywhere. So, on to the next episode. Maybe we journey somewhere crazy. We'll see.